Women have been conditioned by society to be, act, and think a certain way. Here at Girls IRL, we encourage women to challenge societal norms and embrace their femininity. With that being said, let's get into this week's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Girls in Real Life podcast. I'm your host, Mariah Clayton. Today, we are going to get our finances in order, and I'm so excited. If you're watching, I'm wearing green because we're talking about money today, so I had to put my green dress on. But I'm really excited because I have a very special guest with me today, and I actually found her through TikTok, which you guys know I get a lot of my guests through TikTok, but I was scrolling on my For You page, and a video of her budgeting template came up, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is genius. I immediately bought it, and I was like, okay, I have to get this girl to come on the show and give us all of her money advice. So I have Erin with me today. Erin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Mariah. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so I know that you are like fairly young. You're 23.
Yes.
Okay, and you are pretty much using your platform to like educate young people about finances, how to set themselves up for success, retirement, literally all the things that I still don't even know about at 26 years old. So I just want to say one, thank you for using your platform for good and, talking about this because I feel like it's something that we don't really learn, not in high school, not in college. These are things that you don't learn or experience until you're in the real world after you've already, leased an apartment or ran up a bill on your credit card. And now you're like, what in that world am I supposed to do? So I want to know what got you into finances and like, how did you become so savvy about learning about money?
Yeah, 100%. So you're absolutely right. Literally, no one teaches this. And that was something that I realized in college. So I went to college to study finance and economics. And I was like 3 years into my degree, and I'm looking at my like course outlines and everything. And I'm like, I'm not learning about personal finance like at all through my 4 year degree. And I'm like, if I'm not learning this as someone who's literally studying finance and economics, like who is learning this stuff? Like my parents growing up taught me the basics, don't get into credit card debt, don't spend everything that you make, you need to save a percentage of what you earn, like that kind of thing. But that's really all of like the financial advice I've ever been given. So
Mm-hmm.
in college, I was really shocked that I didn't learn any of it. And I was actually dating a guy at the time. This was like probably my junior year of college. I might have been like 20 years old. I was dating a guy at the time that actually worked as a wealth management advisor. So I feel like I was really fortunate in the sense that I like had someone to look up to that was very financially savvy. He
Mm-hmm.
talked about his job a lot, and so he talked about like investing. So from there I was like, okay, like I know I need to save my money. I've been saving for a little while. Like let me kind of learn what I need to know about personal finance. So from there, I really just started diving into like books and podcasts, I would say. Like those were the two main sources of like information that I got interested in. Obviously, I was really like interested in the topic of money because I studied finance and economics.
Mm-hmm.
But I needed to like take that education upon myself and like read books, listen to podcasts to be able to like learn what I know today. And it's really
Yeah.
sad that they don't teach you this stuff in school because, like you said, like you enter your 20s and you
You have
just
no
have
clue
no
what's going
idea.
on. No, I think that's really cool, but I also think you're a rare breed because I know for me and probably a lot of other people in their 20s, they're like finances are boring. I don't want to sit here and try and, learn about something that like I can just figure out as I go. I know for me, I'm like I literally hate money. I hate math. I don't like finances. Like I've never been a very much of a person who like likes to do math or paid attention to money very much. I'm just like if I got it, I got it. If I don't, I just don't. So I think you're a rare breed to where it's like, okay, I actually majored in this and I'm understanding that now if I'm not learning this in my major that I'm in, like how is anybody learning any of this? But like you said, it's all about going out and fishing for that information yourself, which is a step that I think a lot of young people do not take, not even in just a finance regard, but in literally anything about education regard. It's like if I don't learn about it in school, then maybe I just, will learn about it as I go along. I don't need to really know about this. But it is something that we need to know and understand because there are so many little things I think about finances that if you don't understand, you'll never be able to take full advantage of. Like a credit card, for instance. You know, I've had a credit card for, I don't even know, like 3 years. And I was one of those people who I was like, I don't want a credit card. Like if I have the money, I'm just gonna use my debit card and like pay it off. But I didn't understand like, oh, you can get points for money for using your credit card. You can, build up your credit so that way that if you want to buy a house, like you can get this line of credit from X, Y, and Z bank. And it's like those are things that I did not understand at the time of me getting a credit card. So I guess since we're talking about credit cards, we can just kind of like dive into that. But even at 26 years old, I still have a credit card, and I'm like, how do I use this thing? So, what what are your
Yes,
tips for
yeah,
like utilizing and taking advantage of your credit cards?
definitely. Yeah, back to your last point first, though. Like, I definitely am a rare breed. Like, literally, no one cares about this stuff. And I get that. And I think that's what's really hard. Like, when you're talking about it on social media, like, I need to take a step back and be like, okay, for 90% of the people that are watching this video, they probably don't care about it like I do. Like, I do kind of like nerd out on the topic of money and like it gets me really excited. Not so much on like the budgeting side, but like more so on the investing side. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
am kind of a money nerd when it comes to like the topic of investing and financial freedom and retiring early and like all of that good stuff. So I get it. Not everyone, it's not everyone's like thing, and that's
Mm-hmm.
totally fine. But like just having a baseline understanding of all of like the foundational concepts, I think is really good. But yeah, onto the topic of credit cards. Credit cards are one of those things that I feel like everyone thinks that they're like, I don't want to use the word like scammy, but I think
Mm-hmm.
everyone thinks that they're just like the connotation around them is really bad. But credit cards are actually a really great part of your financial foundation for a couple of reasons. First, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You're good.
Oh, sorry. First, building your credit score is really important, and not having a credit card makes it really challenging to build your credit score in your 20s. So, a big piece of your credit score is your credit mix. So, how many different types of credit you have open. And for a lot of young people, if you've never had a credit card before, that might only be like, let's say, your student loans, or let's say
Mm-hmm.
you only have a car loan or something like that. Adding a credit card into the mix like diversifies your overall credit. It also increases your credit limit. There's a lot of factors that play into your credit score that having a credit card open can help. Second, a lot of insurances and protections come with a lot of credit cards to make them worthwhile using over your debit card. So, for example, if someone got access to your debit card and they went and purchased $1,000 worth of stuff, it would be really hard for the bank to give you your $1,000 back.
Mm-hmm.
Like 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get that $1,000 back. But if you use a credit card and someone steals your credit card and tries to buy $1,000 worth of stuff, you're not liable for those purchases. There's insurance on that. So there's just a lot of like extra protections that come with like not swiping your debit card. I have not swiped my debit card in literally 3 years. I don't even carry it around
What?
with me in my purse. I only yeah, I only use my credit card for literally everything that a credit card can be used for. The only thing that my debit card is used for is for paying rent, and there's even credit cards now out there that like allow you to pay your rent on your credit card as well. So, and yeah, that's not just for the rewards, it's for a lot of those protections that I was just talking about. But obviously, the third reason is the rewards. I mean, I like to get rewarded for the purchases that I'm going to be making regardless. So,
Mm-hmm.
just having a credit card open allows me to do that.
Okay, I'm still stuck on the fact that you said you haven't used your debit card in 3 years because I feel like I
Yeah, I
still
haven't.
rely so heavily on my debit card. And I think it's because I'm almost scared of my credit card. I'm like, I don't want to run up too much credit. I don't want to build up so much interest. And I honestly don't understand how the paying off of a credit card works because, okay, I understand like you spend this amount of money in a month. You want to make sure that you pay off that credit card amount before you roll into your next month. Like, you don't want to carry your debt over month after month after month because that's how your interest rate builds up and that's how you end up owing more money than what you've just already spent. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm so scared to use my credit card because what if I run up credit that like I cannot pay back? Like,
Yeah.
that's what my fear is.
Yeah, and that is a very valid fear, and I will have to say, like, using a credit card like I use my credit card, like for 100% of my purchases, that's not for everyone. For example, I have a friend that isn't as into her finances like as I am into mine. She really doesn't keep a budget. She doesn't track most of her expenses. Like all of her spending goes onto her debit card. And for that type of person, I think that's really great. Because if you're not budgeting, if you're not tracking your expenses, if you really don't know where your money is going every month, that is a situation where you could potentially abuse your credit card and get yourself into credit card debt. So I do have to say, like, the reason why I'm able to put all of my expenses onto a credit card instead of a debit card is because I diligently track my spending. I know exactly how much money I'm spending every single month, and I know that I'm not spending outside of my means, even though all of that spending is going onto a credit card. The other thing is, like, I think credit card companies do make the whole like payoff schedule confusing on
It's
purpose.
so
Like you just said, you don't
confusing.
really understand like when do I pay off my credit card? Like, okay, I know I make purchases during the month and I need to pay that off, but like how does that work? So your credit card has a statement date and a due date.
Hmm.
So your like credit card statement period will be about a 1 month period. And that's not necessarily like the first to the 30th. That could be like maybe the 6th of the month to like the 7th of the next month. Like it's a weird schedule.
Hmm.
On your credit card statement balance on your statement date is what gets reported to the credit bureaus. And that's important for like your credit utilization and like all of this stuff. This gets kind of technical. But your statement balance on your statement date is what is due on your due date. Now, your due date comes about 1 month after the end of your statement period. So it'll be like your statement date, and then a month later, it'll be your due date. So
Hmm.
on that due date, that's when you're paying your month's expense. So it's almost like 1 month behind,
Yeah. That
if that
makes
makes
more sense.
sense.
Yeah, it does, but also at the same time, like it also doesn't. But I understand because I'll get like, okay, your credit card statement is now available to view, and I go and I look at it and I see like all the things that I've done, and then it tells me, okay, this payment is going to be due on whatever. Like I think I pay mine on the third of every month. So this
Hmm.
amount of money is due by the third of every single month. And the thing with a credit card is I mean, I'm sure everybody knows this. Like, you don't have to pay the full amount. You probably should, but you can pay a minimum, or you can just pay like half. You can pay most of it, but you don't necessarily have to pay all of it. And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up is that if I'm paying the minimum every single month, then there's no way I'm ever going to be able to catch up and like actually pay off my credit card because if I'm still going month after month building up expenses on my credit card and I'm only paying the minimum,
Hmm.
hello, like you're playing catch up the whole time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it does get very confusing. I will say, like, a good tip for that is if you're having trouble, like, conceptualizing when you're spending the money versus when you're paying off your credit card, you can actually change your statement date and your due date. So, like, either through the app or by like calling the bank or whatever. Like, let's say your due date is on the 3rd of every month, but it makes more sense for you for it to be on the 1st of every month or the 15th of every month because that's when you get paid. You can call your bank and get it changed to the 15th of every month so that you know, like, like maybe you have 3 credit cards and you want all of your due dates to be on the exact same day of the month for like whatever reason. This is really good for for someone like me because what I do is I just set up automatic payments
Hmm.
for the due date of every month for the entire statement balance. So I know that like there's literally no way that I will ever get into credit card debt because every single month on my due date, the entire statement balance is paid off in full.
Yeah, that's what you want to be. I want to be paying your balances off in full. But no, I want to talk about
But you need to be tracking your spending to make sure that
right.
there's enough money in your checking account to pay it off.
Yes, and that's literally what I want to jump into next is tracking your expenses because this is how I found you was through your video talking about budgeting and your budgeting template, which is freaking genius, by the way. Like, if anybody knows how to use a freaking Excel spreadsheet or Google spreadsheet, it is you. Like, I was like, this is fantastic. So, your budget tracker is very, very like highly detailed. So, I just kind of want you to talk about how you budget your expenses and why it's important for us to budget our expenses so that we know where our money is going every single time we get paid.
Yeah, definitely. So if you look at the template, The first page of the template is called monthly goals. And I should have just named it budget, realistically, because this is the tab that you are creating your budget on. So, this is the tab where you're saying, okay, I'm estimating that my income is going to be X amount every month. I'm estimating that all of my individual expense categories are going to be this amount per month. I'm listing out all of my bills that I pay. I'm listing out all of the subscriptions that I pay. I'm listing out my monthly debt payments. So, what's my car payment? What's my student loan payment? That's where I'm estimating these types of things. Once I enter all of that information, I'll be able to see, okay, I'm estimating that my income is this much. I'm estimating that my expenses, bills, debt, all of that is this much. What's my amount left, or my hypothetical, like my estimated amount left to save and invest every month? So it gives you that number right up front. And then from there, you can say, okay, I should have this much left every single month to save and invest. What are my saving and my investing goals from that? So
Mm-hmm.
that's where you can say, okay, every month I want to save $200 into my emergency fund, or I want to invest $200 a month into my Roth IRA. You can allocate that money accordingly. And a lot of people like to take that number and set up automatic savings and automatic investments from there, because they know that they should have that amount of money left at the end of every single month. So that's the first tab.
Mm-hmm.
Then you move into the individual, like January, February, March, April, like all the monthly tabs, right? This is the tab where you're going to log all of your expenses every single month. So you go in there and say, okay, this week I bought groceries for $50. I went out to eat with my friends for $30. Like, you're listing in like the transaction section all of your individual transactions. I do this on a weekly basis. Like, every single Monday I just pull up my phone, I go through all of my like credit card statements, Venmo transactions, bank accounts, like all of the stuff, and say like, these were all 10 of the transactions that I had this week. I'm listing
Mm-hmm.
all of those out. And what it does on the other side of the tab, it it shows your estimated amount, so your budget from the first tab, and it compares it to how much you've actually spent so far that month. So
Mm-hmm.
as you're listing out all of those transactions, that's calculating into the actual column, so that you can really easily see, like, okay, I budgeted to spend $250 on my groceries this month, but I've actually spent $300 so far this month on my groceries. So, like, why am I doing that? It really allows for that, like, reflection, and just to say, like, okay, I went over my budget in X, Y, and Z categories, and let's try
Mm-hmm.
to fix that for next month.
Yeah. And I think what I like the most about your template is that there's these little graphs so you can like visually see, okay, if I said, like you said, if I said I'm going to spend $200 on groceries this month, but I spent 300, there's actually a little bar and it like goes over the number and I'm like, this is so genius because when I'm sitting down and I'm, trying to write out my expenses, and I've never done this before, and I didn't start doing this until I saw your video, and I was like, I feel like this is something that I need to do, especially with me about to have a child and like trying to budget and adding new things into my lifestyle. I'm like, I got to see where my money is going. And so for me, it was so eye opening to like sit down and actually write out all of my transactions, because when I'm just out and about and I'm shopping, I'm swiping my card, like I'm not really thinking about the repercussions of, oh my God, am I $10 over my grocery budget? Am I spending too much money? Do I have this much money to spend on these clothes that I really want that I don't need? So being able to sit down and kind of like itemize exactly where my dollars are going and how I'm spending my money, I was like, oh, girl, you need to slow your roll because you are trying to live a lifestyle that you cannot maintain right now. And even though it might not feel like it in that moment when you're purchasing, once you sit down and actually allocate like where your money has gone, it truly is mind blowing because you don't realize it until you actually sit down and run all the numbers and you're like, dang, I spent this much money going out to eat with my friends. I spent this much money at the mall. I spent this much money on running to Target just because I felt like it. And it's like all of these random purchases that you don't necessarily have to do, but that we just do in our day to day lives because consumerism is like real, like overconsumption. And it's like, dang, I really spent this much money on this stuff that I don't even need.
Yes, 100%. The two biggest categories, and you just said it yourself, like the two biggest categories that, like, it makes an impact for me to be tracking my expenses is like the food and drink category. So not necessarily my groceries, but like my going out to eat and like going out to the
Mm-hmm.
bar category, and then also my shopping category as well. So like I set myself X amount of a budget for each of those two categories, but like to actually be logging all of my expenses and seeing like, oh my gosh, I spent $500 shopping this month. Like, what did I even buy? Like, it just
Exactly.
adds up so quickly. And when you're not tracking your expenses, like, I think people don't realize until they get into the habit, like, how much money they actually spend and how easy it is to actually spend your money. That's why I really like the yearly summary dashboard tab as well. That's like the last tab of the template,
Mm-hmm.
because it shows you how much you've spent year to date in each of your categories. So when it's like June, you can be like, oh, I've spent $3,000 shopping so far this year. Like, what did I even buy?
Exactly.
So that's just like really great to like hold yourself accountable as well.
Yeah, that's definitely what it has helped for me. And I'll put the link to her budgeting template in the description of the episode if you guys are interested. I think it's only like it was only like $5 to buy.
Yeah, it's like $5. I like to like I don't know. I feel so weird about even charging people like anything
No,
for stuff
first of
because it's like I'm
all,
trying to help you be better with your money. I'm not trying to like charge you
I know,
money.
but
But like
literally,
I've gotten
y'all,
so much good.
when no, but when you look at this spreadsheet, you can tell that you put so much time and intention into it. I'm like, she should definitely be charging more than $5, but I'm gonna get it because it's only $5. So no, don't feel bad
Oh,
about
good. I'm
charging
glad
at
you're enjoying
all.
it.
Yes. Since we're on the subject of like tracking our expenses and kind of like where we're putting our money, what do you think are some of the places where we waste the most money? Like I know you said food and drinks, and shopping, but well, I guess the better question is why do you think that we spend so much time like not saving money and more time like spending money?
Yeah, 100%. I think that there's like an overarching thought process from young people that like they'll be able to save money once they start making more money. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
it, for college students especially, like they say, "Oh, well once I get my first full-time job, I'll have way more money and then I can start saving." I feel like people stay in that mentality for a really long time, but like when you don't have a lot of money is actually the best time to like become really financially literate and get into the habit of not spending your entire paycheck because when
Yeah.
you do eventually start to make more money, you're not automatically just going to become better with your money. You're probably just going to inflate your lifestyle and continue to spend. So I think that's a really big misconception, and I think that's where like a lot of people go wrong with their finances in their 20s.
Yeah, I definitely agree because I was that person that said that. I'm like, oh, when I have a real job and when I'm making this amount of money, like I'm gonna be so good with my money. And when I got like my first real job and I was on a salary and I'm realizing like I still feel like I'm broke because I'm not being responsible with my money and I'm not paying attention to my money. It's like, dang, I thought it was supposed to get easier after this, but no. Like if you really don't understand your finances when you have a little bit of money, it's going to be really hard to understand your finances and to be disciplined when you have a lot of money because when you see a comma or an extra zero in that checkings account or that savings account, your money is like literally going to be burning a hole in your pocket and you're going to want to spend money because you're like, "Oh, I've never had this much money before. Like, I wonder what I can go take a trip. I can go do this. I can go do that." So it's like if you try and wait until you have X amount of money to try and be more responsible with your money, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be less responsible with your money if you have that thought process.
Yeah, 100%. I think another big thing that like not a lot of people talk about is just like you can be the frugalest person in the world. Like you can like go to the budget grocery stores, you can like not go out to eat a lot, not shop a lot, whatever. But if you locked yourself into really big fixed expenses that are outside of your means, you're probably still going to feel like you can't really get ahead with your money. So
Mm.
think like you put yourself into six-figure student loan debt, or as soon as you graduated from college you got a really expensive one-bedroom apartment in the city with like skyline view or whatever, like really good
Right.
amenities, whatever, or you got your first full-time job so you went out and bought a new car and now you have a $700 monthly car payment. I think those are the types of things that people don't focus on. They want like budgeting tips, as in like how to spend less money on groceries every week,
Mm-hmm.
or how to go thrift shopping for your clothes, or like things like that, when like a big percentage of their line items in their budget are the big fixed expenses. So unfortunately, there's not a ton of good ways to like back yourself out of those if you did lock yourself into them.
Mm-hmm.
But just like trying to be mindful about that and like being proactive about those big line items can like really make a big difference.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that I don't fully understand because for me, like, I didn't have to take out student loans. I was on an athletic scholarship. I've never really been into debt. I've never been in a position to where, like, I've had to spend this amount of money and now I have to pay it back. So, for me, it's like I don't really understand people who like have to budget that into their finances because like I've never been in that position to where it's like I have to pay X amount of dollars off my student loans every month. So, what would be some advice to people who do have some of those highline expenses and who have unfortunately locked themselves into maybe a position to where it's like I don't know how I'm ever going to pay off this debt. Like, is it worth it to pay off the debt? Should you just try and like pay as much as you can? Like, I don't really even know how to ask this question because I don't understand it. But what would be your advice for someone who does have those highline expenses?
Yeah, it's really, really challenging. I'm really fortunate I'm not in like a lot of debt. Like I'm in about $40,000 worth of student loan debt, which like still sounds like a big amount of money, but like in the grand scheme of things, like a lot
There are
of
people
people
who
are
have
getting
more.
themselves into six-figure student loan debt,
Yeah.
and it's really challenging. It's really sad too that like when you're 17 years old applying for college, no one's telling you like if you get into $100,000 worth of student loan debt, you're going to be needing to pay like close to $1,000 a month for the next 10, 15 years of your life.
Wow.
Like no one really explains the repercussions of that, and I think that that's like a really bad disservice to like young people in this country. I do
Mm-hmm.
think that like reform has to come, and like it probably will be coming to like the way that we get our loans as 18-year-olds in this country. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's really challenging. I think like there are a lot of like income driven repayment plans and things like that where you can like weigh your options, especially for federal student loans. You can weigh your options and try to bring that monthly payment down. But the other thing is really just trying to like, okay, if you know you have a big student loan payment, and there's really nothing that you can do about that, try to focus on your other big line items in your budget. So maybe don't go out and get a new car, like try to get an old used car that will give you a
Mm-hmm.
monthly payment, or get roommates to bring the cost of your rent down, things like that to try to offset that cost because it's going to be a big portion of your budget for probably a lot of years.
Yeah. For unfortunately a lot of your life. But yeah, I think that's really good advice. And if you do have those highline expenses, like she said, just making sure that you are budgeting and paying attention to your expenses and not wasting your money in areas where like it doesn't need to be wasted, because you can sacrifice going out to dinner with your friends or whatever for a month, 2 months, or whatever the case may be, so that you can live a stress free, debt free, or at least somewhat, and feel like a relief that you're paying towards something instead of like, oh man, I just went out to dinner last night and now I gotta pay this big old $1,000 loan. Like I shouldn't have did that. You don't want to have that regret. But I guess kind of
Mhm.
diverting into the next thing that I want to talk about, which I think is something that is kind of trending on TikTok just because I've seen a lot more videos about it now, is high yield savings account. And this is the first time that I've ever even heard of what this is. And I've had a savings account literally since I was like 16 years old. And when I saw a video come across my For You page talking about a high yield savings account, I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what? Nobody's ever told me anything about this. So, what is a high yield
Yeah.
savings account, and why should we be putting our money into those types of savings accounts instead of just regular savings accounts that your bank gives you?
Yeah, definitely. So there is a reason why you haven't really heard of them, or why they're like kind of a buzzword right now, because I'm hearing that from a lot of people. Like, oh, high yield saving, like, is this a new product? Like, I haven't really
Mm-hmm.
heard of this, whatever. It's not new. It's just the yield or the interest rate that you're paid on your savings account has to do with the interest rate that the Fed sets. And for the last 4, 5, 6 years, interest rates have been like literally record lows, like
Yeah.
almost zero. So high yield savings accounts weren't really paying a high yield for the last 4, 5, 6 years because interest rates were so low. But now that interest rates are coming back up, interest rates on high yield savings accounts are also coming up in lockstep. So let's try to explain it this way. When the Fed increases interest rates, mortgage rates go up. So we know that interest rates on mortgages have been going up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Banks make money on people taking out loans. So when someone takes out a loan to buy a house, the bank makes money on the interest on that loan. Banks use their deposits to fund those loans. So
Mm-hmm.
banks are getting money from the loans, they're using your deposits to pay those loans. So they need more deposits in order to make more loans. So they pay you money as an incentive to keep your money in their bank.
Right.
So they're making the money on the spread between what they're earning from the loans and what they're paying you on your deposits. So that's just like a little intro on how banks make money. But so as mortgage rates are going up, banks are able to also, in lockstep, increase the interest rate that they're paying on your savings account. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where these high yield savings accounts are coming from. It's just because the Fed is raising interest rates. Now, why don't all banks raise their interest rates the same? Like, why do some banks pay a significantly more interest than some other banks? Um, the banks that are paying these high yields, so your high yield savings accounts, they're usually online banks. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, I use Capital One. There isn't like a Capital One branch around me that I can like go talk to a teller in person and get money out of my savings account. I have to do that all online.
Mm-hmm.
So their overhead expenses are lower, so they're able to pay more than your traditional like brick and mortar local bank that you can like go into a branch and talk to someone about it. So that's where your like high yield is coming from. Like I said, I use Capital One. There's a lot of really good ones like Ally, Goldman Sachs, Marcus. There's a lot of different providers that have really good high yield savings accounts. But yeah, they just basically pay you more money on the money sitting in your savings than a traditional savings account.
Yeah, because I want to say the interest rate on my savings account, I have Neighbors Federal Credit Union, which I don't even think is a big bank. I don't even think it's a bank at all. It's a credit union. Um, and I want to say it's like 0.01% or something crazy like that. And so when I heard about a high yield savings account and people are, have double that interest rate, I'm like, hold on, why has no one ever taught me about this? So I just thought that it was really interesting and something that
Yeah.
was like brought to my attention. I was like, I didn't really know that that was a thing.
Yeah, it is really crazy. Like, so for example, the interest rate on my Capital One high yield savings account right now is like 3.4%, let's say.
Mm.
So that means that, let's say I have $10,000 sitting in my savings. At the end of the year, I would have made $340 on the money just literally sitting in my savings
Right.
account. If you have a savings account with a 0.01% interest rate, that is $1
Exactly.
that you're making on your savings. So it's
Exactly.
just like people can't really conceptualize like why do I care about this? And at the end of the day, like is that $340 going to like drastically change my life? No, but it
No, but it's free
literally
money.
takes like 2 minutes to set up yeah, it takes 2 minutes to set up a high yield savings account and like it's sort of like a why wouldn't you do it type of thing.
Yeah, it's like if your money's going to sit in your savings account anyway, why not have it sit and build more than what it's already building? So, do you have to, you can
Definitely.
just get a high yield savings account wherever. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be with your banker. It doesn't have to be through who you're banking with, right?
No, it doesn't. So if you like still want to have your debit account at, I forget what you said the name of your credit union was. If you still want to have your debit
It's
account with
small.
them, you can. Um, you can just set up a, let's say you wanted to set up a high yield savings account with Ally. You can do that in like literally 2 minutes and then transfer the money that's sitting in your credit union savings account into your Ally account and it'll start earning money.
No,
So I do
yeah.
have a like my high yield savings account is with Capital One. I also have a checking account with Capital One as well, just because like I also have a Capital One credit card. So I just like being able to see like my checking account, my savings accounts, and my credit cards like all in one dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like personal preference.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you think it's beneficial to kind of have all of your accounts with the same bank, or do you think it's okay to like switch around to different banks? Are there banks that you prefer over other banks? Like, I just want to know what you personally like.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think that there is a benefit of having it all in one place. And I wouldn't say all in one place. Like I have credit cards with other banks, so I don't only have Capital One credit cards, but I use my Capital One Venture X card for like probably 70% of my transactions. Like it's like my main credit card. So
Mm-hmm.
I like that I can log into one place and all in one screen. I can see like this is my current credit card balance, this is how much is in my checking account, this is how much are in like I have different savings accounts for my different savings goals, which is like we can talk about that as well. But I can literally see it all in one dashboard, so I do think that there's a benefit there. It's just like really your own personal preference. I know a lot of people really like Ally for a high yield savings account, because instead of like creating different savings accounts for your different savings goals, you can just do like little buckets
Mm-hmm.
in one savings account. So, like, let's say you're saving for a down payment on a new car, or you're saving for a vacation or something like that. You can set up different buckets inside of your savings account to like save for those things.
Yeah, that sounds like something I need to do. I'm gonna do that. The next thing that I want to talk about, because you are on a goal, right, with your retirement or your 401k. I've seen you post about it on TikTok. And I just kind of want to talk about retirement because it's something that when we're in our 20s and even in our 30s, we're not really thinking about like how to set ourselves up for success once we're not working anymore. So I just want you to kind of talk about your walk through setting up your retirement plan, how you're setting up yourself for success so that you can be done working at whatever age it is that you want to be done working at, and why it's beneficial to think about those long-term things right now while we're still young.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I can talk about this topic literally for hours. But yes, right now I'm on like a journey to hit a 100K net worth. That's like my next big like goal that I'm working towards. So, from a net worth perspective, that's like all of my assets combined, so all of the money in my savings accounts and then all of the money in my different investing accounts minus my liabilities. So, my car loan and my student loan are really the two liabilities that I have. So I'm on a goal to hit a 100K net worth in 2023. I think I'll be able to hit it, but I'm only about like halfway there so far. So we're working towards it.
Get it,
Um,
girl.
but yeah, so I really got interested in the whole like retirement thing when I started reading those like personal finance books and podcasts. Um, and the reason why I got interested in it is because I learned about the idea that retirement is not an age, it's a number. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, when you think about retirement, when you hear your parents talking about retirement, they're talking about like, okay, when they will be eligible for Social Security, when they can get their pensions from their work. They're really talking about like 65, 67-ish as the age. But when you start reading some of these like financial freedom, financial independence type books and start listening to podcasts and things like that, you realize that like there's a lot of people out there that have been able to invest enough early on in their life to really set themselves up to retire early.
Mm-hmm.
Retirement is not an age, it's not a predefined age, it's a number that's in your investment accounts that is able to sustain your life for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So I really just got interested in that topic and learned like if I want to retire before the age of 65, that's completely in my hands. It's just up to me to invest enough early enough on to be able to make that happen.
Right. So when you say, I love how you said that retirement is not an age, it's a number, because I think we get so caught up on, retiring by a certain age that we forget about the money aspect of it. It's like, oh yeah, I've worked 40 years, I can retire now, but it's like, okay, what money did you have saved up over that 40 years, or what did you invest in over that 40 years in order to make sure that you actually can retire at 66, 67 years old? Because if you don't have money, then you're still gonna have to work. So it's like,
Yeah.
I really like how you said that, it's not based off of your age, it's based off of a number. So as far as like, I know a lot of people get retirement through their actual jobs, but let's say somebody is like self-employed. How would they go about setting up their own 401k or investing in order to save up for their retirement?
Yeah, 100%. Back to your first point, I think that's a big reason why we aren't really taught this, or we aren't taught to like care about investing for retirement, because like all of the people that would have taught us about it, like our parents, like our professors at university, things like that, it doesn't affect them like it affects us. They are
Right.
relying on Social Security, they are relying on their company's pensions. They like their retirement is a lot more defined, whereas like our generations, it's really going to be more on us to be able to save and invest to be able to retire. So
Mm-hmm.
it is kind of scary. Like people should be taking this very seriously. But when it comes to like the actual accounts, first of all, I just want to like put the disclaimer out there. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't like give advice on like what individual people should be like which accounts they should be opening, or
Right.
how much they should be investing, or anything like that. But I can talk about like what I do. So I do have a 401k through my employer. If you don't have an employer that sponsors a 401k, so let's say you work part time, or you're a freelancer, or anything like that, you wouldn't have access to a 401k, but you would have access to like pretty similar accounts, and I can talk about those. But so I have a 401k through my employer. I have a Roth IRA open. So IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. So anyone that has earned income in any given year can be contributing to a Roth IRA up to certain income limits. So the Roth IRA and like the IRA in general is really great because you don't have to have an employer sponsoring that account. You can kind of do it on your own as long as you have that earned income. So I have that, and then I also just have a regular like taxable brokerage account, and that word always like trips people up. But like brokerage is just the name of an account that you invest in. So like my 401k, like that is a brokerage account. It's just like a tax advantage brokerage account. Whereas like
Mm-hmm.
a taxable brokerage account is just like a regular investing account. You open it up, you invest in the stock market, you it doesn't have any tax advantages to it. It's not a specific like retirement account. It's just literally an investment account. I don't know. There's a lot of jargon that like really trips people up and makes them like scared to get started in this. But so yeah, those are like the three main accounts that I'm investing into to like work towards my net worth goal and ultimately like invest for retirement. You asked the question like if someone doesn't have a 401k, like where can they be investing? There's accounts like if you're self-employed like with your own business, so if you have a business for like let's say your podcast, there are products like a SEP IRA and a solo 401k.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just like a freelancer or you work part-time, you would be looking more into like the IRA and things like that.
Yeah. So basically, whatever you're investing in just kind of depends on where you are at career wise, whether you have a company that's going to, give you a 401k account, or if you're self employed, going out and seeking those other accounts and educating yourselves on which ones that you should be investing into. And I don't know. I just feel like investing is so confusing to me because there's so many different things that you can invest in. And it's like, what should I be investing in? What should I not be investing in? Like, what is safe? Like, is investing even 100% foolproof safe? Because like there's like the stock market goes up and down, and like I just feel like there's so many variables when it comes to investing. So can you just kind of talk about investing a little bit and just educate, I guess, me really on like what
Yeah.
investing is and how to even get started with investing and how to make sure your investments are like good investments?
Yes, 100%. And I can point you towards like some good resources as well because it is really confusing and like there are risks. Like with literally anything in life, like if you're looking for a return, like there is a weight between like your risk versus your return in
Right.
anything in life, and it's the same way with investing. But I think to like make it a lot more simple, there's a difference between your investing accounts and then your investment products. So what we were just talking about before, our 401ks, IRAs, solo 401ks, brokerage accounts, like those are all of the accounts that you use to invest. What's inside of those accounts is your investment products. So once
Mm-hmm.
you put money into your 401k, once you open a Roth IRA and start investing into it, you need to actually invest the money that you're putting in there. And at the end of the day, like most people are just investing in like the stock market. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
really what it comes back to. And yes, you said the stock market like really ebbs and flows. Sometimes it has a really good year, sometimes it's down 20% like with what we're seeing. And that can be really scary for a lot of people and it can really deter them from like thinking about it from a long-term perspective. However, when you're looking at like the individual years of like, oh, last year the stock market had a 20% return, this year it has a negative 20% return, it needs to come back to what you're investing for. So for me, in my personal situation, I'm 23 years old and I'm investing for literally decades from now. Even if
Mm-hmm.
it's before traditional retirement age, it's literally decades from now. So for me, if the stock market drops 20% this year, why does that matter to me?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to conceptualize, but to remember that I'm not using that money for literally decades. So if it drops 20% this year, next year it might be up 20%. If you look at historical like average returns, the stock market returns around 10% as like an annualized average. So that means like if you're looking at the last 40 years, you could have significantly up years, significantly down years, but that
Mm-hmm.
all averages out to about a 10% annualized average return. So I know that even though this year my investments are down maybe 20%, by the time I go to use that money literally decades from now, it should all even out and I should have a lot more money than what I started with, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a lot easier said than done. And for someone who's like not super well versed on investing, it can be really hard to like put your money in and see it drop 20%.
Yeah, that is definitely scary. And I think because I have never like invested my money into anything, I don't think. I've never done it unless they did it like through my job for me automatically. Like I've never like sat down and said, okay, I want to invest in this and I want to invest in this. And I think it's because again, like I just feel like there are so many fears that I have about finances as far as like using a credit card and investing and like hearing all of these stories about recessions and thinking back to like the Great Depression and the stock market dropping and everybody losing their money. You know, I feel like there's so much fear around money and investing that it's almost like as a society, people try and tell us, hold on to your money. Like, you know, don't do this with your money because it could result into this. And I think there's been so much fear instilled in us in regards to our finances that we're so scared to even take that first step out into what could possibly be like a great financial decision for us because oh my grandma said don't do this, you know, we have our family and our friends and everybody in our ear trying to give us different financial advice and it's like if you never fully go out and educate yourself or try for yourself and like see what it does, you'll never fully understand the benefit of how you can, you know, make your money work for you, like they say.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I'll give you a really good resource if you're like open to reading a
Yeah.
book, The Simple Path to Wealth. And
Mm-hmm.
I can like send it to you after this call or whatever, but the book is called The Simple Path to Wealth, and the author like wrote it for his teenage daughter to like help her understand like why she should be investing in the stock market and like how the stock market works and like how you should be thinking about it. So that's a really great book to read. Definitely look into it.
Yeah.
But it is really scary. Like for example, my parents aren't like super financially literate, and I think this goes back to your point about like you have a lot of like influences in your life like telling you that like maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Like that's my case as well. When COVID hit, the stock market
Mm-hmm.
took like a huge, it was like a 40% drop or something, or maybe not 40, I don't know, but it
It
took
was
like a
something
really big drop,
crazy.
right? Yeah, maybe like 30, I don't know. But it took a really big drop, and my dad sent me a text message and said he like pulled out half of his investment, like pulled out of half of his investment. So he like sold because he was really scared about the stock market continuing to fall. So he
Mm-hmm.
bought it when the price was here. He let it fall to here, pulled it out because he thought that it was going to keep going like this.
Right.
But a year later, it went back up like this. So it's like when you're buying high and selling low, like that's how people are losing money in the stock market. But when you're investing for like 10, 20 years from now, the odds of you losing money, the odds of your principal value being lower than what you bought into it for is very, very low.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I do want to read that book. So, yes, I will definitely get into that because I think another reason why I haven't been like fully invested in my finances is because like it's such a difficult concept to understand. And so to know that there's like a book out there literally written for a teenage child that I should be able to ingest and like be able to understand, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can definitely do that. But yeah, I think that's just the problem with finances. And when it comes to these big companies and these big banks and everything, I feel like it is in their advantage for us to stay as uneducated about our finances as possible because then we'll, like I said, we'll never be able to take full advantage of how we can actually use it to our benefit. So I think number one, it definitely starts with education, but you have to be willing to go out there and seek that education for yourself. But I guess the last question that I want to ask you is what would you say are some tips to just kind of help some people level up financially? I know we've talked about a lot, but just rounding it all out, what would you say are like your top 3 to 4 things that people can do to make sure they're leveling up financially?
Definitely. I would say starting on the budget side, there's like a big debate on like, oh, should you work to decrease your expenses or should you work to increase your income? And a lot of people say like, don't restrict yourself, increase your income instead. But like, it really does start on the expense side. So take a look at your budget, take a look at those big fixed expenses like we talked about, and see if there's any room to cut back for those. Like just try to find room in your budget to save slash invest at least 10% of your salary. Like that's just a really good foundational habit to have, even if you don't think that you're making a lot of money like at this point in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like for example, the like budgeting framework is like the 50/30/20 budget method, basically saying that 50% of your take home pay should go towards your needs, so your fixed expenses, your bills, things like that. 30% to your wants, and then 20% to save. I know not everyone can do 20%, but like I think that's a really good framework for like a starting point for someone
Mm-hmm.
to take a look at where their budget is currently, where they're currently spending their money, and see if it fits at all into that framework. You might realize that your fixed expenses or your needs are closer to 70% of your income, and at that point you're probably not going to be able to get ahead financially. So
Mm-hmm.
really just starting with the budget side, getting into the habit of tracking your expenses, and getting your credit score in order, because at the end of the day, like as we move into like our late 20s or early 30s, we might want to start doing things like buying a house, getting a new car, things like that. And like to be able to do that in a
Mm-hmm.
financially savvy way, we need to have a good credit score. So I would say those are like really good places to start. I also on my TikTok account have an entire playlist called Financial Foundation, and it goes through 10 steps to like literally have a solid financial foundation. So I think that that's a really good place to start as well if you're interested in checking that out.
Well, I'll definitely be linking your budgeting template and your TikTok and your Instagram in case anybody, wants to go out and find that information for themselves because like I said, your page has honestly just like helped me so much and I'm like, this girl is so much younger than me, but she is teaching me so much and I'm not ashamed about it at all.
Oh,
So again, thank you for using your platform to just like educate us because like I said, there is this big hole and there's so many people who truly don't understand their finances and I think that it's really much needed.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm glad it's helpful.
All right, you guys. Well, again, like I said, if y'all want to connect with Erin or have any other questions for her, I'm not going to say her DMs are open, but you might, if you want to shoot your shot at Erin, go ahead. I'll have it linked in the description of the podcast and also along with the book recommendation that she gave me and any other resources that I decide to put down there. It's all in there for you guys. But Erin, thank you so much again for joining me today. I think this episode was very helpful and eye opening, not just for me, but a lot of my listeners as well. And to my girlies, I hope you guys have a great day, a great week, and I will talk to y'all in my next episode. Bye. Bye.